Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kishore Kishori ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki jai, Gonitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning. We're reading from Canto 11, Chapter 7, and the text for today is 18. Tasmat bhavantam anavadyam anantaparam sarvagnyam ishvaram akunta vikunta dishnyam nirvinadiram uhe vrijnabhirapto Narayanam narasakam sharanam prapadye Tasmat bhavantam anavadyam anantaparam Sarvagnam ishvaram akunta vikunta dishnyam Nirvinadiraham uhe vijnapritapto Narayanam narasakam sharanam prapadye Tasmat bhavantam anavadyam anantaparam Sarvagnyam ishvaram akunta vikunta dishnyam Nirvinadiraham uhe vrijnabhitapto Narayanam narasakam sharanam prapadye Please chant. Tasmat bhavantam anavadyam anantaparam Sarvagnyam ishvaram akunta vikunta dishnyam Vinadiraham uhe vijnanabhitapto Narayanam narasakam sharanam prapadye Tasmat bhavantam anavadyam anantaparam Sarvagnyam ishvaram akunta vikunta dishnyam Nirvinediraham udide vijnipapto Narayanam narasakam sharanam prapadye Tasmat bhavantam anavadyam anantaparam Sarvagnyam ishvaram akunta vikunta dishnyam Virninadiraham ihe virnabhitapto Narayanam narasakam sharanam prapadye Thank you very much for chanting. And this is, did you want to go to Tendrup? Tasmat bhavantam anavadyam mananta param. Sarvagnyam ishvaram akunta vikunta dishnyam. Nirvinati rahamuhe vijnina pitapso. Narayanam narasakam sharanam prapadye. Thank you very much for chanting. The word-for-word translation, this is the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, as is the purport. Tasmat, therefore, bhavantam, unto you, anavadyam, the perfect, anantaparam, unlimited, sarvagnyam, omniscient, ishvaram, personality of Godhead, akunta, undisturbed by any force, vikunta, the spiritual kingdom Vaikunta, dishnyam, whose personal abode, nirvina, feeling renounced, di, my mind, aham, I, uhe, O Lord, vrijna, by material distress, apitapta, tormented, narayanam, unto Lord Narayan, nara sakam, the friend of the infinitesimal living entity, sharanam prapadye, I approach to take shelter. The translation. Therefore, O Lord, feeling weary of material life and tormented by its distresses, I now surrender unto you because you are the perfect Master. You are the unlimited, all-knowing, supreme personality of Godhead, whose spiritual abode in Vaikunta is free from all disturbances. In fact, you are known as Narayan, the true friend of all living entities, all living beings. Purport. No one can claim to be a self-made man because everyone works with the body and mind awarded by material nature. By the laws of nature, there is always anxiety in material existence, and terrible tragedies periodically harass the conditioned souls. Here, Uddhava points out that only Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, is a proper master, friend, and shelter for the conditioned souls. We may be attracted by the good qualities of a particular man or demigod, but we may later discover discrepancies in that person's behavior. Therefore, Krishna is described as anavadyam. There are no discrepancies in the personal conduct or character of the personality of Godhead. He is eternally faultless. We may faithfully serve a master, father, or demigod, but when it is time for us to receive our reward for faithful service, the master may die. Therefore, Lord Krishna is here described as Anantaparam, which indicates that he is not limited by time or space. The word anta indicates the termination of time, and para indicates a spatial termination. Therefore, Anantaparam means that Lord Krishna is not limited by time or space, and thus will always dutifully reward his faithful servants. If we serve someone other than the personality of Godhead, our so-called master may forget our service or become ungrateful. Therefore, Lord Krishna is described here as Sarvajñam, omniscient. He can never forget the service of his devotee, and therefore he is never ungrateful. In fact, it is said that Lord Krishna does not remember the faults of his devotees, but only the sincere service they have rendered. A further disadvantage in serving anyone besides Krishna is that when we are in danger, our master may not be able to protect us. If we take shelter of our nation, that nation may be destroyed in war. If we take shelter of our family, they may also die. And as described in the Vedic literature, even the demigods are sometimes defeated by the demons. But since Lord Krishna is described here as Ishvara, or the supreme controller, there is no danger of his being overcome or even impeded by any other power. Thus, Lord Krishna's promise of protection to his devotee is eternally valid. If we do not serve the personality of Godhead, we will not know the ultimate result of our service. But here Lord Krishna is described as Akunta Vikunta Dishnyam. Lord Krishna has an eternal abode called Vaikuntha, and that abode is never disturbed by anything. The faithful servants of Lord Krishna will certainly go back to Godhead, back home, for an eternal life of bliss and knowledge in the personal abode of the Lord. However, since even the demigods, and what to speak of insignificant human beings, are subject sooner or later to annihilation, what ultimate benefit can be derived from serving them? Uddhava describes his personal situation as Nirvina D and Vrijna Bitapta. In other words, Sri Uddhava states that he is exhausted and discouraged by the contradictions and anguish of material life. He has been forced, therefore, to become humble and surrender to the lotus feet of Krishna, the personal friend of every living entity in the material world. A great man does not have time for insignificant men, but although the Lord is the greatest person, he sits in the heart of every living entity. Thus, he is the most merciful. Lord Krishna is the ultimate shelter of even Nara, or the Lord's Purusha expansion, who creates the material world. The living entity is called Nara, and the source of his material situation is Nara, capital N, or Mahavishnu. The word Narayan indicates that even Mahavishnu finds his shelter in Krishna, who is certainly supreme. Although our consciousness is presently contaminated by sinful propensities, if we follow the example of Sri Uddhava and take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, everything can be rectified. Taking shelter of Krishna means taking shelter of devotional service to Krishna and obeying him. Lord Krishna demands this in Bhagavad Gita, and if we comply with the order of the Lord, our life can become fully auspicious and successful. Sooner than we expect, we may, by Krishna's mercy, enter the kingdom of God for an eternal life of bliss and knowledge. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swaham Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragutam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitam Shah. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radha Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Taribhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimata Romapada Swami Iti Namine Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimata Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you very much. So good morning. I'll read the translation again for a recap of the particular text 18. So this is the translation, and it's Uddhava addressing Krishna. Therefore, O Lord, feeling weary of material life and tormented by its distresses, I now surrender unto you, because you are the perfect master. You are the unlimited, all-knowing, supreme personality of Godhead, whose spiritual abode in Vaikuntha is free from all disturbances. In fact, you are known as Narayan, the true friend of all living beings. So there's a notion in Western philosophy of fittingness or appropriateness. So an individual, in determining what is right or wrong for him to do, chooses that which is how he wants to live. So that may be choosing that which is in line with his realizing an ideal. So of course, such a consideration will necessarily take into account the effect on others of his actions or choices. So here, in this statement by Uddhava, he considers it appropriate to surrender to Lord Krishna. So surrendering implies giving up something completely, after perhaps striving to keep that something. That's what surrender means. So to understand the picture of giving oneself up to the control of Lord Krishna, one can consider an analysis that's made by Srila Rupa Goswami. And it comes from Nectar of Devotion, the summary study by Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Rupa Goswami, he breaks down the ways in which one has given oneself over to the control of Lord Krishna. Taking it, the understanding is that one is in a condition of ecstatic love for Krishna. So one of those indications of having given oneself over to the control of Lord Krishna is that one is always anxious to utilize one's time in the devotional service of Lord Krishna, meaning one does not like to be idle. One wants service always. So there's a description of Uddhava. And this is how the description is. And this is coming from the 3rd canto, the 2nd chapter of Bhagavatam. He was one who even in his childhood, at the age of 5 years, was so absorbed in the service of Lord Krishna that when he was called by his mother for morning breakfast, he did not wish to have it. So, Srila Prabhupada describes the activities of Uddhava. And this is how Srila Prabhupada describes it. So this is that same time period. He used to play with dolls in the form of Krishna. He would serve the dolls by dressing, feeding, and worshipping them. And thus, he was constantly absorbed in the play of transcendental realization. And Srila Prabhupada states, these are signs of an eternally liberated soul. So Srila Prabhupada gives a definition of an eternally liberated soul, and this is the definition. He is a devotee of the Lord and never forgets him. So there's no interim of some other distraction, even taking breakfast. So another way in which one has given oneself over to the control of Lord Krishna is that he's always reserved and perseverant. So this aspect of Uddhava is also highlighted in the Bhagavatam by Srila Sukadeva Goswami. So this is the description. Uddhava thus served the Lord continually from childhood, and in his old age, that attitude of service never slackened. So Srila Prabhupada, he notes that in the transcendental service of the Lord, there is no retirement at all. So it's not that one looks forward to a time of retirement. On the contrary, the service attitude increases more and more with the progress of age. So because of no satiation, there's no retirement. So I had a moment, Subal and I were meeting with our spiritual master on Zoom, and I was commenting to my spiritual master that Subal doesn't stop work on a project that he's working on, and my spiritual master laughed and said, "Oh, look at this. I never stop." And of course, I found myself laughing because it's so accurate. There is no pause in the attention to devotional service on the part of my spiritual master. At any time, he's giving 3 classes a day, and the constant preparation for festivals that are coming up 2 months, 3 months, 4 months later, as he's traveling on planes, moving to a different place every 3 days. It produced a peal of laughter from me that he doesn't stop. So it's because of no satiation that there's no retirement. That's the point. So another way that one has given oneself over to the control of Lord Krishna is that one is always detached from all material attraction. So Srila Sukadeva Goswami, he relates that as soon as he was asked by Vidura about the message of the Lord, so this is in the 3rd canto, the 2nd chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, Uddhava at once remembered all about him, at once. So that's an indication that that's where the attachment is. So the description continues of Uddhava. For a moment, he remained dead silent, and his body did not move. He became absorbed in the nectar of remembering the Lord's lotus feet in devotional ecstasy, and he appeared to be going increasingly deeper into that ecstasy. So that's a description of Uddhava, this indication that someone has given themselves over to the control of the Lord. Just a reminder or a question regarding Krishna, and this is the response. Srila Prabhupada notes that Uddhava appeared to regret that he had forgotten the Lord's lotus feet. That's why the moment of silence, he was actually regretting that he may have forgotten. Then he again remembered the Lord's lotus feet and remembered all his transcendental loving service to him. And by so doing, he felt the same ecstasy that he used to feel in the presence of the Lord. So that's just these indications that Uddhava has given himself over to the control of the Lord right from very young age. Now, a 4th way that is visible of one who's given himself over to the control of the Lord is that the person is always eager to describe the transcendental qualities of the Lord. And these are all Srila Rupa Goswami's breakdown from Nectar of Devotion. So in today's text, that's precisely what's happening. Uddhava, the words of Uddhava to Lord Krishna is precisely that. He's describing the transcendental qualities of the Lord. So it's dead clear that he's given himself over to the control of the Lord. He doesn't even have to state it. And how he does it is by using a comparative method. And this purport was very much drawing from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. Because Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he notes that Uddhava says, and this is how he puts it across, that though someone may have all good qualities, he performs bad activities. So sometimes one may hear that in the present time that we're living in, we're hearing all about the leaders of the country performing. It's understood that there's something amiss with them and there's some bad activity that's performed that just reinforces it. But there were times when the leaders of the country were understood to have good qualities, but there's always a problem that some bad decision could be made, some bad activity could be performed. So, by contrast, to dispel such a doubt being put upon Lord Krishna, because this seems to be the general norm, even with good qualities, some bad action, some bad decision may be made. But to dispel such a doubt about Krishna, so this is how Uddhava goes about praising the good qualities of Lord Krishna. He points out what the general norm is and then contrasts it with what's the position of Lord Krishna. So he says, so there can be no doubt that Lord Krishna does not have this problem, that he appears to have all good qualities, but then some bad action may be performed. Uddhava states that Lord Krishna is irreproachable in conduct. And the word that was used was anavadyam. So that irreproachable conduct is contained within the analysis of Krishna's personality as being Dhira Prasanta. This is given in Nectar of Devotion. So this is like a little package that describes the personality of Lord Krishna. He's described as being peaceful, forbearing, considerate, and obliging. And Srila Prabhupada notes that particularly Lord Krishna showed himself as being very expert in giving moral instruction. So Lord Krishna says of himself to Narada, who's visiting his various palaces, there's this at that time of the pastime, and he says this to Narada, I am the speaker of religion, the performer, and the sanctioner. I observe religious principles to teach them to the world. So this covers, and should I say, it makes it clear that it's a personality who's completely perfect. Not only does he speak religion, he actually observes those same principles, and he teaches them to the world by his behavior, and of course verbalizes them and gives instruction directly. So something of his considerate personality, just going to this very nice encapsulation of the personality of Krishna, of being obliging, considerate, forbearing. So looking at this thing of his being a considerate personality, because being considerate often can be contrasted with somebody who will perform inconsiderate behavior, because that's when the bad behavior happens. There's no consideration given to others. So in the case of Krishna showing this considerate aspect of his personality, it's seen when he's giving reassurance to Narada at the time when Narada is visiting the various palaces. So this is what he says to Narada. Do not think that you have committed an offense by allowing me to bathe your feet today and accept the water as holy remnants. Just as a son does not offend the father by touching him with his foot while sitting on his father's lap, so you should understand that in the same way, my son, you have not offended me. So imagine the great consideration. He's actually in this extraordinary position of being the sanction of following religious principles. And here's an indication of how he's following the religious principles but he understands that he has to express his consideration towards Narada, acknowledging that Narada may actually feel a little bit offended because Lord Krishna is bathing his lotus feet and taking the water from that bathing as something sacred. So he gives reassurance. So this is the extraordinary aspect of such a personality. And and just to reinforce this idea that Lord Krishna is the person who speaks on religious principles and not only acts on them, here's what he says in Bhagavad Gita. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. I mean, it's such an important role that a prominent personality plays, that their behavior has to be exemplary. I've heard my spiritual master say that generally when he's traveling, he's very conscious of how he's behaving, because naturally it will be noted how he's behaving. So a great personality, all eyes are on that great personality. So that particular statement of Lord Krishna's, that whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world follows. That's from Bhagavad Gita 3:21. Yad yad avarati shrestas tad evataro jnana sayat paramam kurate lokas tad anuvartate. Now, Srila Prabhupada notes that a teacher must follow the principles of Shastra to teach the common man. So Lord Krishna fulfills the criterion for being irreproachable in conduct. And that was one of the praising of the qualities that Uddhava did of Lord Krishna. Uddhava continues in his eagerness to praise the qualities of Lord Krishna, showing that he has given himself over to the control of Lord Krishna, just the fact that he continues. Srila Vishwanath makes this comparison because he's examining, this purport is examining how Uddhava is using this comparative method, dispelling any doubt that Krishna could fall into the normal category. So some persons may be served, but when the time is there to give the results, they perish. So, one may spend many years caring for a parent, perhaps who's in not a good physical condition. And so, some results may need to be given there on the part of the parent, maybe some acknowledgement in a will or something, but they may die before that happens. So, Lord Krishna, as Srila Vishwanath explains, Uddhava is saying has no limitation in terms. Uddhava is saying of Krishna that he has no limitation in terms of time or space, and therefore he will always award that which is required. So he's not limited by time, that he's going to perish at any moment, or that he may have to suddenly go somewhere else. So it means he's always going to give the award that's required. And the word that was used was anantaparam. So here's how it's explained. In the case of fruitive workers that are working to get their reward, or in the case of persons who are just speculating philosophically. I have a neighbor right next door to me who's one of those persons. So a lecturer at the Northwestern University, and I remember some brief exchange where I mentioned that yoga is the process of linking to Supreme Being. Immediately the person said, yoga, to yoke. So you actually are somehow a beast of burden by his definition. So, philosophical speculator, if you're not actually drawing from disciplic succession knowledge. So, in the case of fruitive workers and philosophical speculators, the award is no liberation. So, you could say, so Krishna is actually giving the correct award, So there are two ways of passing from the world. One is light and one is in darkness. So when one passes in light, he doesn't come back. But when one passes in darkness, he returns. So darkness is that, not actually having had the illumination of knowledge coming from the Vedas. So Lord Krishna explains what he awards. So he's awarding whether one is passing in darkness, one gets a chance to return. He's awarding if one's passing in light and in an illuminated state of consciousness, that one is actually entering into Vaikuntha, or the spiritual world. So Srila Prabhupada explains, the Lord is always present in some universe. This is just to indicate how Uddhava is put the statement across very clearly that Lord Krishna is not bound by time and space. So here's Srila Prabhupada explaining, the Lord is always present in some universe, just as the sun is present in either the western or eastern hemisphere. The sun is always present in either India or America, but when the sun is present in India, the American land is in darkness, and when the sun is present in America, the Indian hemisphere is in darkness. But it means the sun is always present. So in the same way, Lord Krishna's appearance and disappearance is like that of the sun. Lord Krishna's disappearance in one universe is the beginning of his pastimes in another, and these take place simultaneously. So he's not limited by time and space. Now, Uddhava's eagerness to describe the transcendental qualities of Lord Krishna continues. And Srila Vishwanath does the breakdown. Some persons do not have complete knowledge of Lord Krishna's omniscience, meaning the word that was used, sarvagyan. So in the case of Goddess Bhumi, who offers Lord Krishna praise and obeisances, she says, obeisances unto you, the Supreme Lord Vasudev, the primeval person, the original seed, obeisances unto you, the omniscient one. So there's an example of somebody having that understanding of the omniscience of Lord Krishna. He's the primeval person, the original seed. The Lord Vasudev, the son of Vasudev, obeisances unto you, the omniscient one. That's from the 10th canto, the 59th chapter. And Uddhava goes on in his praise. Some persons are incapable of giving complete protection, but you give complete protection as the controller of all. So that protection is epitomized by this statement on the part of Lord Krishna. Krishna says it of himself. Though engaged in all kinds of activities, my pure devotee under my protection reaches the eternal and imperishable abode by my grace. So Krishna says it himself. He's making a statement. And since we heard one of the praises of him was he always follows religious principles and he espouses them. So he's actually saying that the person who's engaged in all kinds of activities, his pure devotee, is under his protection, and he will reach the eternal and imperishable abode by his grace. That's from Bhagavad Gita 1856. So the pure devotee is acting under the direction of the Lord, or his representative, the spiritual master. So that devotee is 24 hours a day engaged in activities under the direction of the Lord. So that quality praised by his pure devotee Uddhava is that the devotees engaged in Krishna consciousness are eventually placed in the transcendental abode due to the kindness of Krishna. So the protection is there, for that abode has everything. It's eternal, imperishable, and full of knowledge. So such praise of Lord Krishna indicates how given to Lord Krishna Uddhava is. By his behavior, one knows Uddhava. All his actions are appropriate or fitting in relation to his having made it his ideal to give himself over to Lord Krishna. So these were some thoughts on this particular text for today. If there's some thought that comes to mind to expand the discussion, please feel free.
Thank you. Nice class.
Thank you very much.
I was touched by Uddhava's humility, and especially, you spend some time describing the character of Uddhava, that there was never a time, even in his childhood, that he was not in that position of full surrender and liberation, that there's not a gap in which he forgets Krishna. And then you see, and this is something that, this is very loud, this is something that you see in the descriptions of devotees, that, I got it, that they take this position of humility, but it's not fake, it's actually felt. It's something that they experiencing that position. I mean, Uddhava is speaking like he's forgetting. He's not. He is overwhelmed by the material circumstances like that. That's that he puts it in the verse. The material circumstances are very difficult, and
There's contradictions.
Yeah. Yes. So this thing of these personalities to be able to sort of seeing themselves as not qualified or being in a position that is of forgetfulness. And the part that surprises me from our conditional perspective is that there's one thing that one is instructed to do. It's part of our process to be introspective. And introspection also means that I have to understand where I'm at particular. I'm aware of my weaknesses and strength, like that. It seems on these personalities, these very high, elevated personalities, that there's moments of there's not an objective understanding of themselves as eternally liberated or eternally in a position of never forgetfulness, because they see themselves, I'm forgetting, and it's not fake, it's actually felt. So I was just wondering about that,
Yeah, you could say that the humility has one scrutinize oneself quite a bit. That first description of Uddhava is that, or rather a little bit later, he's actually, when he's dealing with Narada, he's remaining silent because he's experiencing a moment of regret, thinking that, he has actually forgotten Krishna, and it required Narada to come and ask him something in relation to Krishna for him to remember Krishna. But of course, the minute he receives the request, all the remembrance is there. So your point was bringing, your reflection was highlighting the fact that it appears that these liberated personalities in their position of being given over to the control of Lord Krishna appear to have not an understanding of themselves as being liberated. Yeah, I guess the two don't go together, because having humility is taking that subservient position and being willing to put oneself under the control of Krishna, and the other position of seeing oneself as in some sort of privileged position, like liberated. I'm a liberated person. The two don't mix well. That's how it seems to me. It's kind of, what would be the word? It's more like what an ego does. It creates an identity for oneself. So it seems that there's dissolution of ego that's happened in the liberated stage. That's how I would understand it. Because it's ego that creates identity, like I am a liberated personality, or I have whatever. So I think it's just part of that process, the dissolution of the ego and the truly having given oneself over to the control of Lord Krishna. So it's not that one's holding on to a separate identity. That's how I would understand it.
Thank you. It talks about discrepancies in somebody's character. And we can even see in ISKCON that people have left because of discrepancies in people's behavior. I heard the expression used, the bad people scare the good people away. And there's a phrase that says, your actions speak so loud I can't hear a word you're saying. So, and then I heard towards the end of Kali Yuga that there's so much, like, people don't listen to one another because they're all kind of crazy, and that seems like the case now, There's so much quarrel going on, so it's maybe minuscule to what's to be expected, but you just become discouraged by some people's behavior, and you just want to, just retreat and be with your, with the books, or you know what I mean. You try to avoid certain things. So, and then the Uddhava Gita and the Bhagavad Gita, they're similar, but it seems the Uddhava Gita is more enhanced descriptions, definitions. Do you know, like, the Bhagavad Gita was like 5,000 years ago plus, but the Uddhava Gita, what time period was that? Do you know? You don't know what? You don't remember the time period that, because,
I didn't read.
Pardon me?
I have not read.
Oh, okay. I was just kind of
frame.
Curious, but those kind of things came to mind, But thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Jitendra. Yes, it's very interesting, the focus you've put on persons' actions being so loud that you're not actually able to listen to them anymore, because the actions already tell you a great deal about what the internal processing is. Yeah. And this particular text was very much in line with what you said in terms of how Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has, reiterated again what Uddhava is doing. He's making a comparison with the general norm. Exactly that. It appears that, persons have all good qualities, but then there's bad behavior somewhere there. So it's it does seem to be something of this particular age that what you were saying, that persons can't even hear each other because the behavior is bad on all sides. So, yeah, and I mean, at the present moment, there's distress amongst thinking people in the country because the whole atmosphere is filled with this kind of, what would you say, argument.
Quarrel and hypocrisy,
Yeah.
where
both.
men are misguided and most of all disturbed. Short-lived and men are misguided, short-lived, and most of all disturbed.
Yes.
And the
summarizes it
atmosphere is so
perfectly.
materialistic and so much I, me, and mine that they can't think beyond their own little world, you know.
Yes. Yes.
And it's so pathetic because, you know, it says brotherhood and all these, it speaks about these good qualities, but they're not to be found.
Yes.
They're in words only. You know, the behavior is, you know, so far removed from the good qualities.
Yes, yes. Thank you. That's a very nice summary. So yes, that is the. So it's just quite extraordinary reading this way that Uddhava goes about highlighting the perfect qualities of Krishna by sort of drawing attention to the common faults and series of faults. So thank you very much
Yeah.
for doing that very nice summary.
Bob Dylan had a song, Knocking on Heaven's Door. You know, oh Mom, I have no one to look up to. Something to that. Yeah.